Well, good morning, everyone. My name is James Rosenstein. I'm a member of the board of One Business World. It is our great pleasure to welcome you to the 2023 One Media World Conference, a global event, media professionals and enthusiasts from all over the world. As we explore the latest trends, insights, and innovations within the media landscape, let us engage in meaningful conversations and forge lasting connections. We are delighted to have you with us, and together, let's contribute to the future of global scale. It is now my pleasure to introduce Shelli Taylor, who is the CEO of Alamo Drafthouse Cinema, and she will be discussing One Cinema's dilemma. When should you stop innovating and just execute?
Thank you, James, and happy Tuesday to everybody out there. I wanted to share a little bit about Alamo Drafthouse Cinema. I moved with my story with Alamo started in 2017. We'd been living overseas in China for many years and moved back to the United States and moved to Austin, where we were new. And my son, who was in 8th grade at the time, said, "Hey, Mom, let's go to the movies." It was one of our favorite pastimes. And so I said, "Great, I need you to go online because I don't want to stand in line. So reserve tickets, find the movie you want to see, and let's go." So this is sometime during the week. Saturday night rolls around, and about an hour and a half before the movie, my son says, "I don't feel very good. I don't want to go." And I'm sure all you parents or even previous kids at one point realize children don't pass up fun events unless they're really sick. And so I'll never forget this moment, because about an hour and a half before the show, I called the theater and I literally said, "I am sure there is nothing you can do for me, but my son isn't feeling good and we were hoping to get a refund for our tickets." And to my utter surprise, without pause, without hesitation, the gentleman on the other end of the phone said, "No problem, we'll give you a rain check, come back when you're ready." So a week or so passes, we decide to go, try it again. We actually make it to the movies this time, but beforehand, we go out to dinner. So we walk into the theater. Now, remember, we've been living overseas in China for many years at this point. We hadn't experienced dine-in cinema, and we certainly hadn't experienced an Alamo Drafthouse. So we walk in after a lovely dinner, and we don't see a concession stand. And my son's like, "Hey, where's the popcorn? Like, we got to have, a soda and popcorn. That's part of the experience." And I'm like, "You're right." So we go up and we ask, and they said, "Oh, don't worry, there's menus inside the theater, we'll serve you." We sit down and immediately we're greeted. We get a fabulous menu. And my son looks over and he says, "Wow, why on earth didn't we come here for dinner? Why did we have to go out?" And so that began our absolute love affair with Alamo. And, for most of our guests, they have similar stories, whether it's falling in love with the experience, whether it's, the great service, whether it's all the beers on tap, there's something that captures everyone's heart. So after a number of years, as a guest and just a raving fan, my son and I frequented Alamo. In December 2019, I received a call from a recruiter, and they said, "Hey, do you want to meet Tim League, the founder of Alamo? They're looking to bring in a CEO." I thought, well, gosh, I just won the lottery. I am a huge fan and can't imagine a more iconic and better brand to be part of. So Tim and I started the discussion, of the growth story of 25 years of passion and pursuit of excellence. And how could he continue, and how could the company continue to grow and serve that mission, and at the same time preserve the soul, preserve that local community feeling. One of the things I love most about Alamo, and I still hear it, is most people have no idea that we're a national circuit. And so when you meet them, they're like, what do you mean this isn't a local theater? I thought this was the only one. And that's a feeling and a comment we never want to lose. And so we realized that we were aligned. And I ended up joining the company on May 1st, 2020. Of course, in December 2019, we had no idea what was around the corner. We certainly didn't know that COVID and all of that was coming. So while it may seem like an insane time to have joined the entertainment industry, the movie industry, it really wasn't planned that way. So I'm a little bit ahead of myself, and let me talk about kind of our story. Because if you think about what's trending and what's new and innovation, I would say that for Alamo, they've always been innovative. Tim and Carrie went to Rice University here in Texas and moved to Bakersfield for work. Tim was an engineer at Shell Oil. He hated his job, was not in love with the industry. And one day he's driving home from work in Bakersfield and he sees a sign up on a theater that says for lease. And a week later, he's signing the lease, quitting his job at Shell, and started his first movie theater. And in that theater, what he and Carrie really learned was, one, how to run a business that at that time was low revenue, but figured out how to make decent margins. But more importantly, figured out how to create community. And so the landlord got a little bit smart about their business and decided to double their rent. And they said, hey, that doesn't work. And so they packed their bags. They moved back to Austin with their passion for cinema, and some really good key learnings, and opened the first Alamo Drafthouse here in Austin. And as they started that location, it was literally a parking garage downtown that they rebuilt into a single theater. And they sat back, and as they had the opportunity to create this space, they said, how do we create a theater, and how do we do everything the absolute opposite of what we hate about current theaters? How do we ensure that we have the best sound, best presentation, the best food, that we have beer, not just soda, and that we have just super clean theaters? And so Alamo was really born on this idea of great film, great food, and lots of fun. So a company that was built on the phrase, wouldn't it be cool if? Yep, truly innovation has been and will continue to be our first, our middle, and our last name. So I'll tell you a little bit about this picture and then talk a little more about the company. This is what's called a rolling road show. We take a movie we love and we create an event around it. And so in this situation, this is Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And you can see the mountain behind and the people around. And probably difficult to see, but a lot of the folks in the audience, not is it just that they're outside enjoying this film and in the environment that you would expect, but they're also dressed up. So over the years, Tim and Carrie learned how to take a movie and make it even bigger and really kind of that wraparound event. So it's 2010 at this point. They started in 1997, with one theater, and it slowly grew to a couple of theaters here in Austin. By the 2010 and the early 10s, the industry's growing, Alamo's growing, and they get to a space in 2017 where they realize that the demand is incredible and the only way to keep growing is to bring in money. And so they brought in Altamont Capital as the primary stakeholder or shareholder at that time to continue on that growth. And it was great. They were infused with cash, and that gave them the opportunity to start to catch up with the incredible demand and to pursue some of their bigger dreams. And so during this period of time, they opened 5 new, before COVID, so over about 2 years, they opened 5 new theaters, and they started to heavily invest at the same time in that digital experience. So they created a membership subscription, so we call that season pass, unlimited movies, Alamo Drafthouse, pretty good deal. They developed a loyalty program, a way to create even further engagement with our guests, and started to look at other digital experiences. So you can imagine that that heavy investment in the experience and innovation and getting hit with COVID was really bad timing for the company. And I think it's interesting that frequently you hear catchphrases that culture eats strategy, innovate or die, whatever catchphrase that you want. But the truth of the matter is that all great companies have to be great at culture, they have to be great at strategy, they have to be great at innovation, and they have to be great at execution. And you can't just be one of them. And certainly you're going to have your towering strength or your pillar in there that you are best at. And in this case for Alamo, it was innovation. But as COVID hit, what we learned and we were reinforced is that we needed to continue to innovate. What we really needed to do was double down against culture and execution. And so my first few weeks on the job, starting May 1st of COVID, the theater had been shut down, and the first thing I was doing was facing 4,000 teammates talking about not just furloughs but subsequent layoffs. And then we went down the story that many of you know really well, and I don't want to belabor it, but important for kind of where we're at today and to understand how innovation is critical and how all 4 of those pillars are critical and how we're leaning into them. So we immediately started furloughs. We started laying off people. Our business was closed. That led to restructuring our debt with Bank of America and writing off most of it. That required us to bring in another investor to buy the remainder of the debt. And in that conversation, we then had to go into bankruptcy. You can imagine being closed month after month. And having your fixed costs still there, particularly rents, is not a good equation. And so we went through bankruptcy. We restructured all of our leases and our key debt, and we came out of it in an interesting place with a pretty clean balance sheet. And with the first time after 18 months, we finally had some hope. That was in July of 2021. At that point, finally, the theaters were starting to be able to reopen at some semblance of a reasonable capacity. Up to that point, we had in San Francisco, we still hadn't reopened. And in most of the country, we were still capped at 50% capacity. So in July, we started to be able to reopen our theaters. Capacity was starting to build. But then we were hit with the fact that the studios weren't bringing back the slate because they weren't selling enough, right? Selling enough tickets to be able to put a movie out or afford to be able to put a movie out. So we had that cycle, continue and took a while. And it really wasn't until December of 21 when Spider-Man came out that we had, kind of the first mega tentpole, mega blockbuster tentpole back in the theaters and people returning. And so during that time of COVID and through all of that, we struggled a little bit. I'll be really honest, not just with the obvious things that we struggled with and team morale and all of that, but we really struggled with, do we try to innovate ourselves out of this? Do we play around and create a whole new business model? Or do we stick to our guns and the plans that we had in place and really reinforce our core purpose and our our guest experience? And so we did dabble a bit. We tried turning our restaurants into grab and go, not grab and go, but yeah, grab and go, order online and take and go. We weren't really set up for that. That meant that we had to reconstruct like the back of the house to be able to create that infrastructure for that POS and to service the customer. It cost more money than we actually made. In some cases, we did try doing external, like drive-in type pop-up movies. Again, all of those seem like great ideas, but they were costing us more money than we were making, and we were already losing so much we couldn't afford it. And so in July, we really figured out, like, we can't keep doing this. We have to believe in the industry and we have to double down against what we do. And so at that point, we literally reopened 39 locations, or 34 locations. We had 41 before COVID. We closed 7 of them during the bankruptcy and started to reopen. I'll tell you that reopening a business is actually much more difficult than opening a new business. So we reopened our business and we started operating again. And that focus, excuse me, I need a glass of water, a sip of water. Anyway, so we opened our locations and started doing business. So today, and we'll come back to this a little bit, today we have 39 locations. So we had closed 7, we reopened 34. We actually opened 5 new locations during that period of time. And we are the 7th largest circuit in the country now. We are national in more than 13 states. Our theaters are slightly different in the sense that we are smaller. We're not the mega complex. We have about 7 to 8 screens per location. And we are, I'm proud to say, super proud to say, we're outperforming the industry by over 12% over the last 14 months. So really leading the industry out of COVID into kind of the future. And, I think and I do believe it's because we are considered the darlings of the industry. And that is due to all the work that we'd put in over those prior years as we built this company in creating just the best damn movie theater experience that has ever and truly will ever exist. We're proud of that. So let me tell you what makes our theaters so different. We're not a commodity, and I think that's super important. And it's not a jab at the big 3. However, traditional theaters are, at times pretty expensive and not always the best experience. What makes us stand out is that all of our theaters, are built with the movie lover in mind. So there is not a bad seat in the house. We literally look at every single sight line. We think about the slope of our floors. We think about the positions of our seats. And so that no matter where you're sitting, you get a great view and a great experience. So much so that we took out the first couple of rows in all of our theaters. We don't have, our front rows are quite frankly some of our best. There is no rubbernecking, having to look up. We've focused heavily on soundproofing. We put a lot of money in our walls. It's certainly not sexy. And no one would really, as a guest, you don't see it, so you don't know it. But what you do know is when you come into our theaters, you're not hearing all of the other, you're not hearing the different movies bleed through. When you're in the theater and watching your movie, you don't hear the movie next door to you. We have sound engineers that think about where to place those speakers. Have you ever been in a theater where if you're in the wrong seat, it's way too loud, and then if you're in another seat, it's too soft, or worse yet, the sound is muffling out the voice of people? That just doesn't happen in our theaters. And then we've masked all of our screens. And what that means in lay terms is that depending on the formatting of the movie, we have automatic black that comes around it so that it always is a full screen and the perfect viewing experience. In addition to that, even during COVID, which was difficult, and we had no cash and literally were trying to figure out who to pay first, what we didn't stop paying for was our projectors and our equipment. A bulb of a projector can cost over $2,000. Those have to be replaced at least every 6 months, and we replace them on schedule, if not sooner. A lot of our competitors will elongate that life as long as they can, and that's why you might experience dull screens or lack of crispness in the experience. And then to make sure that experience is always great, and that we're not missing something, when we're cleaning, or after you leave the theater and you finish with your movie and we're cleaning it, we have a sound and sight check that's going on. So we are doing a quick check to make sure everything's in order, so that if it's not, something's changed, because it can throughout the evening, we're fixing it in the moment, and the next person in the next theater that shows is fantastic and no difference. And then lastly, and it might seem like a little thing, but it certainly isn't, we've all had our feet stick to the floor in a theater. Your feet don't stick to our floors. They are not sticky. What else sets us apart is that all of our theaters, like you saw before with Pandora's Box in the prior screen, all of our theaters are themed. So we really think about that local community and what's important to them. Some of the theaters we've opened recently, we opened Staten Island last summer, and we partnered with Riza, who lives on the island, and have a Kung Fu theme. And so our bar there is the Flying Guillotine. If you have a chance to go, we highly recommend it. It's super fun. But on that theme, so you'll go in and see the decor that's around that. Our movie posters in that theater are about Kung Fu. And then we have special cocktails that celebrate Kung Fu movies. If you go to Wrigleyville in Chicago, that's built around John Hughes films. And, if you remember John Hughes films, and one of them being Ferris Bueller's Day Off, famously took place there in Chicago, you'll walk in to see the Ferrari sticking out of the wall in our lobby. And then a celebration of all of his films and film in general. If you go to New Mission in San Francisco, that was a historic theater, and so we renovated, but kept the building as it was, and play an homage to the history of that theater and the community that's been going to that theater for years. Oops. One of the little known facts, again, if you think about film, food, and fun, and Tim really setting out to do everything different than, everything he hated, he wanted to do differently, he wanted to do better. So little known fact, but we are the largest restaurant in town. Our kitchens are scratch kitchens. So you come in and that pizza, we have made that dough fresh that morning. We've baked it for you moments before it arrives to your seat. We have over 24 taps, beer taps in our theaters. We are constantly changing out those recipes. The breweries we buy locally. So each theater is celebrating the local brewers and community. And then we have craft cocktails. And so on a Friday or Saturday night, we're serving over 1,000 meals and 1,000 fantastic meals that celebrate and enhance that movie experience. In addition, we've got specialty bars. So again, everything we do is really like taking and celebrating film. When you come and see a film, it's about how can we make that wraparound experience unbelievable. So we have theme bars at all of our theaters. Again, that theme is attached to the local community. And we hope and see frequently that people will come in before the theater, maybe get a drink, enjoy the movie. But what we love most is that after the movie, people stop, get a drink, and you'll hear all the conversations about what they loved, what they thought, about that movie. And of course, we take fun super serious. So in addition to all that, we offer, we have trivia night and comedy and music and all sorts of fun events for the nights that maybe you just don't want to watch a movie and hang out with your friends. Kind of coming back to we're not a commodity. And this is, really important to us. And you think about the decisions that we've made over time of, that visual and auditory, audio experience that we give all of our guests and making sure it's great. And the cleanliness of our theaters and the amazing people that we hire who are all passionate about movies and are movie lovers. That has earned us the reputation and the hearts and minds actually of, filmmakers and studios and talent. We are frequently the first choice for people to premiere their film because they know we will treat their art with the love and respect that they treat their art. And we do it in a number of ways. So when you come to our theaters, and this again is important because in COVID, when money mattered more than it ever had, we had tough decisions to make. And one of them could have easily been to go against some of the culture in which we built this company. So we hate ads. And so we don't show ads. When you show up to Alamo, that first 30 minutes, we do have a show for you, but it's not TV commercials. It is curated, produced pre-shows by our team. So if you were to show up to a Marvel movie, we might give you the history of all the Marvel movies up to this point, remind you where you're at. And we do that both in video and, through video. If it's Godzilla, we might give you the last 70 years in 7 minutes. You name it. So we spend a lot of time making sure that experience as you're waiting for the movie to start and you're ordering your food, that you're getting a great show. And then before the movie stops, one of the things Tim hated most was people distracting the movie. There's nothing worse than the people next to you talking or worship, pulling out their phone and getting on their phone during the movie. So we have a no texting and talking policy, and we will throw you out if you have the courage to do that. And our PSAs, so the videos that we show to reinforce that message and create some fun around it, are the best. And if you haven't been to Alamo, go to our YouTube channel and look at a few PSAs. They'll give you a good laugh and remind you of why you want to go to an Alamo and enjoy a movie. And the other thing that we do is because we build, smaller circuits or theaters, and we don't have as many screens and, as many seats in most of our auditoriums, we tend to have the same attendance as, our larger theaters do. So that means our capacity, our seats are always full. because you know what it feels like when you go into a movie and you're the only one in there. It's still a good experience because you got the sound and the big screen. But it's really an experience when you're sitting there with your community who are now your new friends, and you're laughing, crying, jumping, whatever it is, but you're doing it together. It just makes that movie better. So we always have, an energy inside our theaters. And so again, like, filmmakers just really look to us and expect and want us to show their films. And that's created this opportunity for us to have incredible relationships and with talent, and then to bring them in and share that with our audiences through Q&A and different types of events. So I shared that we think of this kind of like that we're this interactive entertainment, we're a wraparound to the film. We want to make it better. In this picture, this is a Monty Python show, and it's probably a quote along based on what I'm seeing. And what that means is we show, we do two things. One, we show 2 times the number of the film titles than any other theater out there. So we are showing all sorts of genres, indie, drama, horror. Horror is one of our favorites. Horror films, genre in particular, and documentaries. And of course, we've got the tent poles and Marvel, etc. But we're showing 2 times the titles of anyone else. That's been really important to us as if you think about the innovation of that. And we charge full price for that, by the way. It's not a discounted price. But when we bring in the rep film and these other titles like Monty Python, they represent more than 10% of our business. And so people are looking to us, not just for what's current and new, but also to bring back, older films and create parties and moments around them. The other thing we do is we theme a lot of our food. So when Star Wars comes out, we'll have food that is themed for that. When Everything Everywhere All at Once came out, last year, you can imagine the everything but the bagel sesame seeds coming out. You can imagine hot dogs. If you've seen the movie, hopefully that's not a spoiler. But you can imagine all the types of foods that we had fun with and play or shared during that film. Other ways that we bring films to life and we really celebrate is, again, I shared the Rolling Road show earlier. This one is Jaws on the water. So you can see the screen in Jaws, and all of our audience is sitting out on inner tubes on the water. And of course, unbeknownst to them and in a fun way, Tim hired a scuba diver who was swimming under some of the divers and the audience on their tubes and was pulling on their feet. So it is truly an interactive, bring that movie to life in more than one way. I have to admit, I haven't had the courage to actually sit out on the water and watch Jaws. I just don't think I'll ever get there. Other things that we do and that we're super proud of, again, it's, we take film very seriously, and we're proud of the fact that when we get behind a movie, we put our hearts and souls into it. We partner with the filmmakers and with the studios to bring that film to life in a way that they would want. So this was it. And an opportunity, a fun day for our guests to really dress up and have a great experience. But again, for us to be able to celebrate that film. And so some films that we're super proud of, we got behind before anyone else did and partnered with A24 on Everything Everywhere All at Once. We did a lot of pre-media around it. and social, building it up. We recommended it. We pick a handful of movies a year that are what we call Drafthouse recommends. They're movies that our team has absolutely fallen in love with and will promote. And then helped kind of with the early release of that movie with, photo ops and theme meal and, beverages crafted particularly for it. And so for that movie, not only to outperform, which was important for the industry, it outperformed for us. We acted like a top 4 circuit instead of a top 7. And the gap just to give you perspective, even though we're top 7, the number of theaters, it changes dramatically as you get down that row. So to act like a top 4 is pretty significant. And that movie still, we've had it back in our theaters and it's still selling out. And that's because we love it and we've created an experience and our guests have come to trust and recognize that when we get behind a film, they know they want to see it. Other things that we do to continue to celebrate film and really celebrate filmmakers is we have the largest genre film festival. It's focused on horror films. We do have other films, but it's a week here in Austin every September. And we will show and celebrate filmmakers who maybe their film will never be distributed. And this is the one opportunity for them to get there, all the way to large films that will break. And so this year at Fantastic Fest, Smile was launched. We're pretty proud of that. And so we have that. And yeah. So now thinking back on the innovation. So again, this is new mission in San Francisco. I mentioned it earlier. In this location, we just honored the heritage of the theater as it was and focused on celebrating it versus creating a new theme. So, thinking again back on the innovation, we've innovated over the years in big and little ways. From sweating out every single little detail of how we make this experience come to life. When we're serving your food, we're ducking so that the servers aren't blocking your view to the movie. If we are coming in during the movie and you want to reorder, we're talking in a whisper or as little as possible. Again, trying to think about how to create this best movie experience. And so despite the noise, and you all saw it, we woke up to it every day during over the last couple of years with every headline declaring that really doomsday headliners declaring that streaming was done and that theaters weren't coming back and that we needed to completely change our model or disappear. We said, no, we disagree, and that people will never get tired of human experiences. They'll never stop desiring places like ours that take something special and make it even more special. And so what are we doing? Well, it's important, as I mentioned earlier, for every company, that you have those 4 pillars in place. You have culture, that you have strategy, that you innovate, and you execute. We've been focusing and doubling down on culture and execution. And so we've been focusing on our teammates, our guest experiences. We've been reinvesting in our existing theaters to make sure that they're best, upgrading projectors and equipment, refreshing our interiors, adding recliners or improved seats. We've picked up the work from 2019 that had just started with the membership and the season, the subscription membership season pass, which is all the movies you can watch for one price. It's pretty darn awesome. we picked back up loyalty in our digital guest experience, and we're building those out. We're doing the hard work that we had started and need to continue of building out the back of our house and our infrastructure so that most of our energy is on these cool, fun movie parties and experiences versus on, the inner workings to make it work. And we're continuing to grow our locations through both conversions and franchising. And so while we've opened 5 new locations, we're about to open a new location in Boston early summer. And then we have a very robust pipeline of locations coming over the next few years. And so, as I've said, and as you've seen, we will always be innovative at heart. It is our super strength, our core kind of passion. But right now we're leaning into culture and execution so that we can continue to lead the industry out of the recovery and back into the great experience that you've all come to love and expect from us. Thank you for your time and listening. And if you haven't been to an Alamo, I hope you'll go experience it and see for yourself what a movie-going experience can be.
Well, thank you so much, Shelli. This is such an amazing presentation. I've never been to an Alamo theater, so going through the movie theater is sure you're on a production line. You get in the line, you buy your ticket, you get in, you watch, and you go. And you've turned it into a much more human and humane experience, which should be so interesting to so many people. We don't have too much time, but I just wanted to ask you, if you're serving food in the theater, that often causes noise. I've been to so many theaters where people sitting nearby are eating crackers or something. They make noise, and people look at them and say, please keep quiet. So if you're serving food to so many people, how do you deal with the noise issue?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of noise around eating, but we tend to serve a lot of pizzas and burgers, which aren't too loud, and beer certainly isn't too loud. But even the details of the tables, we thought about the type of material that our tables that you eat on are made of, and we thought about the serving trays so that even when you set that down, there isn't a lot of clinking and noise. So while there's a little bit, we've taken out as much as we can, because we also know that eating and having that experience while watching a movie makes it fun.
There's no question about that. And I was wondering, are you careful about the choice of movies that you select in order to keep in line with your culture and your approach? What are the basic principles for selecting the movies?
Yeah, we have an incredible programming team, and they watch, I don't know how they do it, but they literally watch between all of them thousands of movies a year. And they are, looking for films that we love, and they're looking for diversity of film.
Wow.
And so, whether it's a documentary, and we've got a very controversial documentary coming up right now that we are going to show, but we believe that we should be bringing as much film and as much content and diversity to as many people as possible, and letting them decide what works for them.
Right. And do you get somehow involved in the whole issue about diversity and woke and all these issues that are floating around now? Do you somehow get connected or affected by that?
Our team is deeply passionate about being inclusive and creating environments that are welcoming to everyone. We try not to get, in these moments. We feel like what we can do and the way that we can further culture in the United States is by offering a diversity of films, right, and letting people experience it themselves and have their own point of view. Yeah. So no matter what your point of view is, you're welcome, and you might find in a democratized situation that a theater is, where everyone's the same, having the same experience, that you might be moved and your point of view may be changed or maybe reinforced.
Right.
But we don't pick our films to drive our causes. We pick our films because we think they're great, and we think if we have a variety that different, we will appeal to different people.
Right. Okay, I'd love to continue this conversation, but we are coming to the end. And do you have any Alamo houses on the East Coast?
We do. So we're in DC, we are in Virginia, we're in New York. So yes, and
Good.
soon to be in Boston. We're in the middle and in the West, so all over.
Terrific, terrific. Well, I'll go soon.
Thank you. We look forward
Okay.
to serving you.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. Okay, wonderful to talk. Thank you so much. And we look forward to further conversations. This is a very innovative approach. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.